Welcome to Shades of Us. I'm your host, Darryl Brown. 2020 has been a turbulent year. In the first half of this year, we saw a pandemic that killed more than 100,000 Americans, created mass unemployment, and disproportionately impacted communities of color. Police brutality against Black people sparked tensions across the country and a renewed conversation about injustice. Past guests reflect on the current climate in the U.S.
In light of all of the turbulent events in 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the proliferation of the Black Lives Matter movement and the civil unrest that that's caused, it's been really important to me to stay connected to community in a way that promotes safe spaces for artists, as well as continues to push activism as an artistic pursuit and an artistic value. My name is Liana Kleinman. I'm a choreographer, dancer, and filmmaker, and I'm here in Manhattan, New York. I really believe that art is reflective, that we are bringing our previous experiences to the table, and a lot of the times airing it out and hoping, just appealing to an audience to say, does any of this resonate with you? What is different about my experience that I'm not seeing in yours? And it is really tough to do that when we're all still reckoning with the emotional fallout of having what we called our normal day-to-day disrupted. Rather than trying to create art for a new world, I'm just trying to create signposts to say this is where I was in this time. The fact that this virus is being called the Chinese virus has been a continuing conversation between my mother and I. She was born in Hong Kong, and seeing a lot of the tabloid papers or even major newspapers say things like the Chinese virus has felt like a return to the kind of stigmatizing language that she experienced as an immigrant to this country growing up. And it's felt like a real step back. My identity as a biracial woman has been called into question. I've been doing a lot of interrogating in this time, especially in the context of privilege and the ways in which we rate privilege. I also am a part of a really white-dominated scene, that the contemporary dance scene in New York is very white, and it's something that we all recognize, and it's something that we haven't created rigorous policies to address. In relation to the protests especially, I see a leveraging of privilege to elevate Black and Indigenous voices is tantamount to maintaining the message and the ferocity of these protests. And being a person of color, but not being Black, is a interesting place to be, to understand that I don't have complete privilege and that I don't operate with the safety of being a white person, but also that my voice is not meant to be the one that's uplifted. Creates a lot of questions about how much privilege do I have to leverage, and how can I disengage that from the complexities of my identity. I think that in these times of civil unrest, dance can be a really uniting factor in order to organize people around shared values. And when we gather in space, we are recognizing one another as humans, as feeling entities. A lot of the exhaustion from revolt gets trapped in our bodies, I believe, as a dance practitioner. And I'd like to see ways in which the dance community can recognize that unrest and provide healing pathways.
Right now, I have to say, I think I've felt creatively distracted. I think there's so much happening in the world that at the moment, I'm not particularly feeling very creative. My name is Corey Thomas, and I am currently in Oakland, California, sheltering in place with some cousins. The unpleasant aspects is hearing about people that we know who are ill or getting ill or affected by this in some very negative way, people losing jobs, people struggling to survive. My thoughts about being a playwright at this time is not the most positive, because I really worry whether theater will ever happen again. Until there's a vaccine, will we be able to ever go out without a mask again? Will we be able to go to a theater and sit in seats and watch a play? Will actors be able to be on stage with each other? When we last spoke, I was about to open, I think, my play Lockdown. That was in New York, and it was a very, very different time and place. I came to California because I'm working on some projects that do have to do with people who have been incarcerated. I've continued my volunteering in the prison. I'm here very close to San Quentin State Prison, which is the prison that I volunteer in, and I haven't been able to go inside since March 14th, I think, is the day that they sort of locked down and volunteers were prohibited from entering. So far, thankfully, the prison population and San Quentin State Prison in particular has not been affected by the virus. There's certain sanitation issues that are always at risk because it's also such a dense population and they're so close together. I think that if you're a person of color, I don't think your feelings of self-worth can be ignored at this time of social unrest because it affects all of us. Any of the victims of the police brutality and the reasons that the rage exists is me too. It could be me and it could be anyone in my family. I think as with all my work, I'm always trying to sort of bring to the forefront those who are marginalized or don't frequently get a lot of attention. It's a tumultuous time and I don't know where we're going to land right now. I'm worried, I'm scared, I'm excited, I'm hopeful, I'm many, many things at once. And angry too, very angry. My heart and my soul is very tied with the incarcerated population. That's something that really captures a lot of my thoughts and my time. I would hope that this pandemic, this time, and the social unrest too, has caused those people who are in charge to really think maybe in a new way about the setup as it exists.
I think one of the effects of the pandemic on people of color, communities of color, is we all know that it has disproportionately hit our communities of color here in New York City. My name is Professor Vanessa Valdes. I am in Harlem, New York. So 2020's pandemic has meant that we are all home. And so both here in New York City and in Puerto Rico, my family has been quarantined. I was born and raised in the Bronx. I have family in the Bronx, right? That is one of the two most hard hit communities. Those were the communities that there are higher rates of unemployment. As the current director of the Black Studies program here at CCNY, I've inherited a legacy whereby this program was born out of protest. It was born out of students who took over the campus 51 years ago now and demanded curricula that reflected their histories, demanded faculty that looked like them. My directorship of the Black Studies program has meant that there are times when I can still teach that, and there are times when I will teach the United States and then integrate its relationship with the Caribbean, for example. Historically, this is Harlem's university. I think, first of all, we have to acknowledge, in terms of the impact on students and what remote learning did, is not all students have equal access to technology. It made me more intentional about what I was doing in the classroom. It coincided with my teaching philosophy, which is one that is based on not only an acquisition of knowledge for each student, but also the growth of confidence in themselves as critical thinkers. It is really important for me that our students understand that their experiences in a context, right? And that we reflect the multiplicity and the richness of the Black experience here in New York City. What the pandemic facilitated was that no one could look away. This is not new, unfortunately, police killing unarmed men and women, but there's no distractions in this moment. That is why we're seeing a coalition of people across ages, across ethnic groups. You know, we're seeing protests in every single state in this country, in territories in this country, and around the world, because what this has done is that it has forced a reckoning and a reflection of who are we as a nation. The responses to the protests and the protests themselves will absolutely be a part of our conversations in the upcoming semester. We're having college-wide conversations, and so I think that there is no return to normal. I think there's absolutely a push for a redefining of what we are doing in this society. What do we mean by our institutional commitment and investment in communities of color here in the United States?
I'm Bernard Blythe, and I'm an interior designer. I have an interior design business here in New York City. I'm based in Brooklyn. So as news of the coronavirus hit in China, I remember being incredulous that like entire cities of millions of people were locking down. I thought, well, that could never happen here. It's amazing that they can do that kind of thing. And as it became apparent that it was going to happen here, it seemed a little bit like we were entering into a science fiction where nobody knew what was going on. It was very tense and anxious. It was also a little exciting in a weird way, like, because it was just completely new to your experience. So I had flown just before the lockdown. So I had a trip to California, to the Bay Area. I was only flying out for 4 days. I had a small business and friends sort of weekend planned. When I came back, the next weekend was when the Bay Area shut down. And as the first in the country to close down, I was like, whoa, I was just there last week. But it certainly made me think, okay, New York City's gonna lock down any minute now. And was really surprised that it didn't lock down right away, that it took an additional week after the Bay Area before the city started to encourage people to stay at home. And so during that week, it was odd because my projects, which are in mostly apartment buildings, we're still trying. We were trying to get as much done before the shutdown as possible. So this one client had just had kitchen counters that we were trying to get installed before the building shut itself down. And I was talking with the client on the phone that Wednesday. It was probably Wednesday, the 19th or something of March. Friday, I got a call from a friend who had been a client of mine, who was the contact, how that client with the kitchen, how he knew me, was through this other friend. And she called me and she was in tears. And she said he had died. He had just died. So within a week, there were 2 people who it wasn't sure that they had died from COVID, but I've never had that experience before in my life. I've never had a client die on me. I've never had a week later another like close friend lose someone. It was just, obviously coincidences could happen and obviously all kinds of things like that. But at that moment, right in March, as March turned into April, it was like, oh my God. It felt like this intense distillation of basically, as a gay man, what had happened in my life with AIDS. So, I still have this sense of like, things haven't really changed. There's really not anything different today than there was at the beginning of March. And the only thing is that like now we've gotten so comfortable with hearing about the numbers of deaths, and yet it still should be as anxiety producing as it was back in the beginning of March.
The thing that I've always said is that sports brings us together through common ground, and that's always been the case. But what's happening now is that even within sports, there are issues that divide people, and it's especially at the professional level. For example, Colin Kaepernick and his peaceful sideline protest that was trying to draw attention to Black Lives Matter, that the San Francisco 49ers and the NFL and every owner and every GM and every coach ignored, now comes back as something that really was meaningful. And so no matter what, even if sports comes back, We still have to go and reconcile these issues. Because again, any attempt to go and solve a problem that ultimately connects back to this original 400-year system, you're going to find attempts to squash it. So when the 49ers posted a Blackout Tuesday, Black Lives Matter post, that was just an abomination in terms of the colossal scope and scale of their hypocrisy. And people won't forget that. And then the same thing goes for people like Drew Brees, probably Hall of Fame quarterback with the New Orleans Saints, making comments about his grandfather being in the Army as if Black grandfathers never, didn't go to the Army, right? So my grandfather was in the military. And this is what I mean by when I say that there's this 400-year-old issue, right? Because if you have a self-worth issue, then that means you have an authority issue. It means that any test or challenge to your authority is a challenge to your identity, to your self-worth. So a cop who has that mindset must get you to obey. If you don't obey, even in the slightest, even in a benign situation, you are challenging that person's ego and that person's self-worth, which means that now in his mind, his identity, his existence is being threatened by you, all because you didn't hand over your license or whatever it was. That's what road rage is. But this is cop rage. But it's even more than that, because these police departments have been infiltrated by white nationalists, and that makes it worse. And then there's fear of even speaking out about that within departments. And that's how it is. You don't have to watch a movie to know that. This movement that we've seen just now is really almost the perfect storm of the consequences of the pandemic, this reaction to George Floyd, the way that people opened up to one another through that and connected, that led to a sense of brotherhood among all men. Even if we can safely play football, play basketball, restart colleges, restart leagues, it's not going to block out or distract us from the real issue. And that's why this awakening is so important, because we can't undo it. This has given people permission around the world, all races, all ethnicities, to talk about this and to really challenge ourselves and challenge the United States too, to solve its unconscious 400-year-old problem.
I'm Professor Tanya Cateri Hernandez. I work at Fordham University School of Law. And during the COVID crisis, I immediately went online as the Fordham Law School mandated. In my personal relationships and in the classroom, I wasn't one to use a lot of tech. And so what I have learned is that I am a visual person, and having Zoom really made me think harder about visual as a tool for learning, and also a tool for enjoyment. And my students really appreciated that. It's been hard. And I mean, I'm not uniquely affected, but it certainly has been heartbreaking to be in isolation and at the same time feel all the weight of the world and its ongoing inability, sometimes it seems, to deal with racial diversity, these inflammatory incidents that have been sort of brought onto the global scene for all of us to reckon with, and use those just like in the 1960s with people's bodies on protest lines, to take that moment of concern that people have and try to exploit it as much as possible. And so I have decided that in reflecting on it, rather than moving away from it, I'm going to sort of keep at that in what I teach, with my continuing legal education classes for attorneys and other professionals in the world. Long before, Corona came about, I was doing teaching both in the classroom and outside the classroom, with continuing legal education sessions for attorneys, judges, and the like, regarding implicit bias, that is to say, unconscious discrimination. If we only think of racism and race problems as about a few bad apples who are Caucasian American, right, then we completely undermine our ability to address it. It's not something that we just get taught in the United States. It's stuff we bring with us from Peru, from Argentina, from Cuba, from Colombia, from the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, right? From many places, right, where we speak Spanish. We have discovered how much we are social beings and want to be connected to each other. And in some respects, I wonder if that is helped galvanize some of the responses to the racial killings that we've had by police officers, right? You know, and that has re-energized a public support of hashtag Black Lives Matter. You know, we hear a lot less the message that, well, if all lives matter, then why would we ever need to even say Black Lives Matter? There's been less of that kind of discourse, I've noticed, because with us all at home and desiring to connect, we actually are opening up our screens to see more of what's happening in the world and to how tragedy can open up other spaces for opportunity and for renewal and reform. And that has been kind of an amazing aspect to me about how shelter in place kind of comes together with activism all at the same time.
I'm from New Orleans originally, and we have a saying, I'm just sitting in La La waiting for my yaya. My name is Maurice M. Martinez. I am living now in North Carolina. And so we've been surviving in a number of ways, creating, purging all kinds of negative things from the mind and the spirit and from the body. The family and everybody's fine. We're eating well. I'm also doing an audio version of my book, Black Creole. And we're just about a few chapters from finishing it. So this will be available on an audio book coming soon. I'm taking a lot of care. I mean, I try not to go out or wear a mask, always wear a mask. When I go into this clinic, I have to go get this shot, you know, that some of the organs aren't functioning too much, all that good partying back there, all those years. Lord have mercy. New Orleans, we know how to party 28 hours a day. And it's telling when you get older. At my age, I'm going to be 86 at the end of June. I'm concerned because Ellis Marcellus was 85 when he died. And he caught it, man. Just lost another friend, was in one of my bands, one of my groups. Alfred Uganda Roberts, conga player, very talented. I know I'm high risk, you know, but you gotta remember, I got the melanin factor, and that gives me an additional strength, man. It's something that not to be laughed at. Because this virus is lethal, and my advice is take all the precautions. I fear on all the demonstrations and the protests, people walking around so close and with no masks. The new norm right now has to be an introspective one where we look within and try to get ourselves to be better persons. To become self-actualized, to be human. And we're going to go back to square one because the vaccine's coming along. And when the vaccine arrives, we're going to be right back to where we were before, but hopefully a better people. Well, I am enjoying writing. I feel like a sponge, you know, just been saturated in all of the best liquids and juices of one could have in a past life. And now I have a chance to squeeze that sponge. So I'm hoping that some of these words will come out. In this article that I'm writing on infected, how do we get rid of the infected minds that institute these things? We need a vaccine for them. Because as I wrote, to be born dark in a world of light, to be born black in a world of white, to be suppressed, uprooted, shackled, enslaved, whipped, raped, branded with a hot iron, dehumanized, stereotyped, disenfranchised, lynched, beheaded, impoverished, unemployed, last high, first five, harassed, stopped and frisked, choked, I can't breathe, shocked, isolated, excluded, encapsulated, discriminated, segregated, and incarcerated for no other reason than being Black in a world of white? How then to exist? How, dark man, do you exist?
That's our show for now. If you want to know more about the people you saw, log on to our website at tv.cuny.edu. I'm Darryl Brown. See you next time on Shades of Us, and please continue to stay safe.